Can you brew a big beer in just a week? With big, I don't mean like a big imperial stout or something like that. So just say, can you brew a bigger beer in a week? I've brewed a HefeWeizen once in 6 days, which turned out great. I will link to that below. But this time, let's brew a bigger beer. Let's brew the 17 Black IPA. Let's look at the brew day and then we will come back after that. The malt we'll be using for this one is Maris Otter and Pale Ale malt blend. Didn't have any Crystal 60 at home, so I went with Weyermann's Cara Amber. And for the dark malts, we will be using a blend of Carafa 3 and chocolate wheat malt. Grains are crushed, water is up to temp. I'll save those for later. We will start our mash with the base malts and the Cara Amber. I hooked up the circulation and we're circulating. Let's take a pH reading, a bit high, so we will lower that a bit with some lactic acid. I added a cap of lactic acid. Let's see if we changed anything to this. That changed it up a bit, and we're about 5.4, 5.3, somewhere that area. So we're good. The mash is done, and now we will raise the temp for mash out. We're at mash out temp. Let's add the rosy grains. Give that a stir, and we will let this one steep for 15 minutes. The mash out is finished. We have raised the grains out, and we're gonna start the sparge. This water is 76C. The pH of this water is 6. We're sparging. We're gonna sparge up to 28 liters. Now we're gonna stir this around. Then we're gonna take a pre-boil gravity reading before we bring this to a boil. Let's draw a sample. I'm gonna cool that sample down to about 20°C. Okay, the sample is cooled down. About 10:48. Up to a boil, so we're gonna add our first hop addition, 30 grams of Simcoe, and then we'll start our timer for 60 minutes. We're at the 50-minute mark, so in goes yeast nutrient and Protafloc. We're nearly at the 5-minute mark. We will be adding 35 grams of Amarillo and 35 grams of Mosaic, 340 grams of dextrose. I won't film me adding the dextrose because I want to stir. I can film the second hop addition going in. Okay. So we are at flame out, and we will start the cooling. We will cool this down to 80°C before adding our final hops. Just under 80°C, quite a bit of hops. It's 65 grams of Amarillo, 65 grams of Mosaic, and 70 grams of Simcoe going in. We're gonna let this steep for 30 minutes, and we're gonna come back and give it a stir now and then. This is starter we will be using, the WLP 001, and as usual, to know if this is okay, we're gonna have to taste it. So I poured myself a glass, give this a good smell. Smells good. Okay, let's taste it. Smells and tastes as it should. Super clean as always. A little bit fruity as a starter often is. Yeah, that will probably make us an excellent beer. Can't find any faults with that one. Cheers. So the 30 minutes are up, so we're gonna start the cooling. So it's time to take an OG reading. (1068). We're down to 23 degrees. And it's a brown liquid coming out. At least the first. Beer, or at least wort at this time. Now we'll oxygenate the beer with oxygen for 1 minute before we pitch the yeast. So let's add yeast. The beer are in the fermentation fridge. Just gonna fill up the airlock. That was the brew day. After that it was dry hopped. And with the dry hop I actually strayed a bit from the original recipe. Let's go through the recipe. Malt wise I tried to come as close to the 17 Brew Crew recipe as I could with what I had at hand. So I used 2.31 kilos of Maris Otter malt, 2.31 kilos of pale ale malt, 219 grams of Carafa 3, 290 grams of chocolate wheat malt, 170 grams of Cara Amber to substitute for the Crystal 60, that was the closest I got, and 340 grams of corn sugar and the hops. The first addition was 30 grams of Simcoe at 60 minutes. Then at 5 minutes added 35 grams of Amarillo and 35 grams of Mosaic. The steeping hops, 70 grams of Simcoe, 66 grams of Mosaic and 65 grams of Amarillo. And I did change it up a bit when dry hopping. I decided to dry hop with 51 grams of Simcoe, 41 grams of Amarillo, 41 grams of Citra, 40 grams of Chinook, 30 grams of Mosaic. And I fermented this with the WLP 001. The OG was 1068. After 3 days we were down to 1016. On day 3 I dry hopped and pushed the temperature up and set it at 24°C for 2 days. That only took the gravity down 1 point, so I guessed it had stopped. Tasted it and it tasted okay, so I decided to cold crash it. I gave it 2 days of cold crash. So the ABV on this beer is 7%. So let's go and pour one. Hi guys, lost the audio on the tasting part, so I have to do it again. Very sad to have to be drinking another beer. But a few days later, so it has actually been sitting in the keg now for a few days at about 10°C, something like that, where I keep my beers at. So here you have it, the 17 Black IPA done in a week. Beautiful looking beer. It's very dark, just a little light in the bottom shines through. It's on a off-white head, more like beige. It's hoppy. I can pick up some alcohol. It's fruity, no roastiness flavor at all. I was one of the co-creator of this recipe. I was actually one who pushed for just using the Carafa 3 and no chocolate wheat, because I didn't want it any roasty characters in a Black IPA. But I can't find any of them. Let's dive in. It's a nice beer. It's a little bit sweet. Also have some bitterness. It's very fruity. It's not a tropical hop bomb or something like that. You can feel a little bit of warming sensation because of the higher ABV. The head is sticking around there. Even though it's a nice beer, I don't think it is as nice as my last Black IPA. Final thoughts about this beer. It was a 7% beer made in 7 days, and it's really good tasting, so that's a success. It's a little bit too sweet for my taste. Would it have been better if I left it a few days longer, maybe a week? We can't know for sure. Maybe it could have been better with just a little less bitterness. And I was one of those guys on the 17 Brew crew who pushed for a little bit more bitterness, so it's my own fault. Otherwise than that, I can't find anything wrong with it. Maybe it will improve in the keg if I save it for a couple of weeks. And I also have sent some out, so we will see what other people think of it. That will be interesting. But hey, a big tasting Black IPA in 7 days. That's awesome, even though it isn't my best Black IPA. So cheers guys. 17, Dr. Hans out.